Hello everyone, Zip here. Today we're going to be looking at the Japanese cruiser, the Yubari, Tier 4 cruiser, premium ship. She's an interesting ship, this one. I like her a lot. It's a great ship. Armament-wise, she's got 6 guns on her, 4 turrets, 2 twins and 2 single turrets, which is a unusual configuration. The guns are 140mm, 7.5 reload on them with a 5% fire chance when shooting HE. They can sometimes overpenetrate DDs on AP, so HE is worthwhile for destroyers. But on some destroyers it doesn't overpenetrate, and a lot of the shots don't. So you can use AP or HE on destroyers. I prefer AP because of the higher damage rolls. It's only occasionally that it just punches right through. The big thing about this ship, though, are the 610mm torpedoes at Tier 4. You only get 4 of them in two torpedo mounts, but they are centerline, so they can fire left or right, although the arcs are kind of pitiful. The damage potential, though, especially if the elite specialization is set to torpedo damage, is 3,900 damage. Per torpedo, so that's on paper 16,000 damage approximately. In reality, it's probably between 14.5 to 15,000 damage if you manage to connect with all 4 torpedoes. It's still very decent. The reload is 40 seconds, which makes them a very viable weapon throughout the battle. The torps are 66 knots fast, so they're quick. They're exactly the same torps as the Tier 7 Fubuki. So really good torps for Tier 4. I really can't say enough. I wish there was a couple more torps on there, but this is Tier 4, so we got to be realistic here. As I mentioned, the elite specialization, I've got it set for torpedo damage +3 and 7% increase in chance of flooding. I really think that's the best loadout for this ship. So looking quickly at the rest of the stats here, you can see the gun stats here. The turret traverse in the guns is kind of slow at 10 degrees, but it's workable. You'll see my equipment there in a few seconds. The torpedoes with the elite specialization have a 20% chance of flooding, so 1 out of every 5 torpedoes should cause some flooding. Keep that in mind. The anti-aircraft is surprisingly not horrible on the ship. It could be better, of course. The historical camo gives you a increase in gun and torpedo range. Traverse speed is increased, which this ship needs it. And surface detection is reduced, which it's actually pretty good camo rating on this ship. So I've got right now the equipment. I've got the speed boost. I used to have the extra 15% on the traverse, but I find that the speed boost is better overall now that they've offered it. It's traverse and the turret traverse of 20%. The reload only does 5%, which takes it from 7.5 seconds to 7.14. Not worth it in my opinion. I'd rather have the 20% boost in the turret traverse. So that is much better here. So now let's get into some battles here. So you can see here the acceleration's not great. It's not the destroyer, but it's pretty good. There are other cruisers in the game that accelerate faster, but this is pretty good. I'd say it's among one of the better ones for acceleration. Top speed with the extra 5% on the equipment, because of the equipment and the supplies as well, brings us up to just shy of 36 knots, which is pretty useful. With the engine boost, it goes up to just under 40 knots, so which is useful for getting yourself out of trouble, into trouble as well. You can see here the torpedo arcs are very narrow. They're located midships. This cruiser is really keeping in line with the rest of the Japanese cruisers in the game. So it's a fantastic trainer for learning how to deal with these narrow torpedo firing arcs that are present throughout the rest of the Imperial Japanese Navy destroyer line in the game. So if you really want practice at lower tiers, getting used to these narrow firing arcs for torpedoes, this would be not a bad premium ship to pick up on that basis alone. She's never going to earn a ton of credits, so really that doesn't leave us very much of anything. I don't want to talk too much about credits because I'm of the opinion that credits are a problem in the game, that the economy is broken at the moment. So I'm trying not to review these premium ships on a credit basis because nothing is finalized, set in stone there. Just concentrating on gameplay, and the gameplay for the Yubari is pretty decent. She's just basically like an oversized destroyer that's slightly slower, and she performs very well. If you can play a destroyer, you can play the Yubari. Her gameplay style is just so much more destroyer-like. It's a nice introductory to the Japanese cruiser line, because if you've already played the destroyers, you'll have an easier time transitioning to the cruisers, because she's almost a perfect blend of a destroyer and a cruiser. Consequently, you can get used to the more peculiar cruiser aspects of the ship, while at the same time still enjoying the central line torpedo mounts and maneuverability that is closer to a destroyer. So again, as a trainer for the Japanese cruiser line, I highly recommend this ship. I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it at all. She can carry as well. Although when you get a bad team, you get a bad team. There's only so much you can do. But I've pulled off a lot of come from behind victories with the ship, so she can perform quite well. Mind you, in the game right now, because we're early on, we're still dealing with mostly bot teams. So, but I have been in a lot of player-only teams and done well in the ship. So I do recommend her on that basis. She would not disappoint most people who have played Japanese destroyers. I think she's a good addition to the stable, to your harbor. The only caution I will give is that if you are definitely not used to Japanese cruisers, narrow firing arcs, there will be an adjustment period. I had definitely a good 20 games to get used to the, because I hadn't gone up to the destroyer line, the Japanese cruiser line yet. So because of that, I definitely had an adjustment that I had to make, and I thought my purchase was not that great initially, but then after settling down and just getting a feel for the ship and the firing arcs, she just really start performing very well. So I've got no reservations recommending this ship to anybody who's played the Japanese cruisers or is intending to play the Japanese cruisers, because she is such a great trainer. The guns are, I've been talking a lot about the torpedoes, but the guns on this ship are actually very decent and worth mentioning as well, because they do hit fairly hard, and they're very accurate with some good firing arcs, especially at closer ranges. Very, very decent performance on the HE, as you can see here. The 5% fire chance is pretty good. Certainly it gets better as you go up in the actual tech tree line, topping it at 9% fire chance, but definitely 5% is nothing to scoff at. The AP damage is pretty good. The rolls are usually pretty decent. One weak spot of the ship that's very important to note is the armor, or rather the lack of armor. She gets broadsided easily. She frontally, if you put your bow on, you can bounce destroyer shells fairly reliably, but forget about cruisers or battleships. It's just not going to happen. With the Yubari, you have to rely on your speed and maneuverability to keep from getting hit, because she will incur damage very quickly. If you can master the ship, though, that also means that you're going to be very adept at avoiding damage in other ships up the line. A lot of the tech tree Japanese cruisers are very similar in terms of their armor profile, where basically there is no armor. You have to rely on maneuverability and speed and stealth to keep out of trouble. It's balancing, and that's really what the ship is a perfect blend of, is balance between firepower, torpedoes, armor. I dare say this is probably one of the better balanced ships in the entire game. So what I mean by that, and this is an important statement that she's very well balanced, is that if they ever buffed this ship, it would be very, very good. I wouldn't say overpowered, but it could very easily be made overpowered, just increasing the stats a little bit on the firing rate, or the damage on the torpedoes would very much increase the capabilities of the ship to make her overpowered. The downside of being very well balanced is that if the ships in the tech tree at some point are buffed, the ships around it, that is, are buffed, this ship could find herself very underpowered versus the rest. So while this ship gets a solid recommendation from me right now, I'll probably return to this ship again for another review should the other ships in the game in the tech tree ever get buffed, just because she's going to be very sensitive. The Yubari will be very sensitive to changes in the overall balance in the game. So if the tech tree ships get buffed in any way or get nerfed in any way, because Wargaming will not buff or nerf, at least they don't tend to buff or nerf premium ships directly, because it would kind of break confidence in the whole point of buying the ships in the first place. So they tend not to do that. It has happened in the past in the World of Tanks Blitz. Very early on, the T-34, I believe, was nerfed slightly, and later on buffed. And they have buffed a lot of premium ships, which we never mind buffs, of course. But what's happened a lot in that game is that the tanks in the tech tree have been buffed, making the premium ships in the tech tree, which are waiting to be buffed, fairly obsolete. So tanks like the Panther M10, for instance, are very much less potent than what they used to be once upon a time. This ship, the Yubari, if the developers follow that same kind of progression where they're balancing things after the fact, after ships are released, after the tech tree is already kind of out there in the world, after the premium ship is sold, then you could wind up in the future with a ship that's underpowered. So I'm not going to tell people not to buy this ship, because it's a great ship. Just be aware of that. Aware that you might wind up at some point with a ship that's been stealth nerfed. It's not, I don't think it will happen, but I mention it because it would be irresponsible of me not to mention that that could happen. With most of the other ships in the premium ships I've reviewed so far, even if ships around them got nerfed or buffed a little bit, nerfed would be great because then they'd be overpowered. If the ships around them got buffed a little bit, it's fine because they're really capable of dealing with it. The Yubari, she would still be okay if the ships around her were buffed in the tech tree, but certainly the skill level required to pull off wins more consistently, especially in the face of all the human players that'll be playing shortly, and we probably won't have too many bots in game at all. Though then in that situation, the ship could be a little bit less of a fun ship to sail around in than she was initially. So just be aware of that. If for some reason I had to rebuy all my premium ships, the Yubari would once again wind up in my lineup. So I have no qualms, because I've had a lot of fun games, a lot of pretty decent games, and as a great trainer for the Japanese cruiser line, if I get rusty, like right now, I'm waiting for credits to buy the Amagi, the Tier 8 Japanese battleship, which is 6 million credits. At the moment, I don't have the next in line for the Japanese cruisers. I can't remember off the top of my head right now which one I'm at, but I sold the previous one after I finished researching the next one in line, and I sold it for the credits to put towards I think it was the Kagero. With the economy the way it is right now, I sell off a lot of ships after I've played them through, just to get the credits to be able to move up a little bit more efficiently. The in this game here, I've got a lot of hate for my bots in this battle because they just really let me down. This is not a reflection on the Yubari or my ability to carry. It's just the bots really did poorly in this battle. It does happen. If you've had a win streak, usually be prepared for your bots to play a little bit worse off, it seems. That's anecdotal, that's not no evidence, but just an observation. It seems that that's the case. You'll see here in this particular battle, the bots, not a single bot scored over 10,000 damage here, so that's pretty pathetic. Anywho, most of them are sub 100 in the points department, but this battle here is a lot better. And as I'm watching this battle, I'm just chuckling to myself because it's actually a fun battle, 5-kill battle here. So I think I'm going to sign off here. I've said my piece with the ship. She gets a recommendation for purchase. If you can pick her up, do so. I don't think you'd be disappointed, especially if you're planning on going up the Japanese cruiser liner you already have. If you are looking at some of the other cruisers in the game at tier 6, for instance, or this one, get those ones. Get the DeGrasse or the Molotov. Those are better ships for credit earning and overall gameplay. But if you're on a budget and you're looking to fill out a premium ship that's going to have characteristics of 2 different classes like destroyers and cruisers, so a good trainer for both of them, while at the same time earning a little bit more credits, although not much more credits right now in the current game economy, but perhaps in the future, if wargaming does boost the credit earning for all ships or reduce the credit requirements, maybe the ship will become a little bit better from a credit perspective than she currently is. Right now she's not much better in-game ship, a tech tree ship rather, so do keep that in mind as well. But I am going to recommend the ship for purchase. Like I said before, I would buy this ship again without reservation, and she's a great trainer. So that's it for me. Enjoy the rest of this game, and I'll catch you on the next review.
An enemy ship. Engine boost activated. Enemy ship locked. Anti-aircraft gun on full alert. Our team is about to win. Destroyed an enemy ship. Enemy aircraft incoming! Enemy ship destroyed.